foreign. You know, there's so many acronyms. It's like an alphabet soup trying to understand what all the benefits are. So you just kind of work through, learn a little bit this year, a little bit next year, and eventually it all starts clicking and coming together. There are thousands of laws and regulations, and so that is why it is so complicated. There's variations on all of the different benefits. The Social Security Act covers many programs. We tonight are just going to focus on that top row, you know, general retirement, survivors, and then spend most of our time talking about disability programs, disability benefits, disability insurance, and SSI. Okay, when most of us think about Social Security benefits, we are thinking about our retirement. We're all paying our FICA taxes, paying into the system, and when we reach retirement age, we get to draw that benefit. And the amount that we get depends on how much we earned over our highest paying years and also the age that we choose to retire. So if I choose to retire at age 62, and I say retire meaning draw my Social Security retirement, if I choose to draw that retirement at 62, I'm going to get a lower amount than if I wait until my full retirement age, which is 67. And if I can hold off until 70, that's when I'm going to get the maximum amount. Doesn't make any sense to wait beyond age 70 because it's not going up after 70. If you don't know how much you will get if you retire at those ages, you can go create your own online account, and I encourage everyone to do that. You just go to to ssa.gov, my account, and you can see exactly how much you would receive in benefits if you retired at early versus your full retirement age versus age 70, okay? Now, what happens if you die and, who is going to get your benefits? You've paid into this system, so who gets the benefits? These are your survivors. So your widow can get benefits, an ex-spouse sometimes can get benefits, children, minor children are going to get benefits, and sometimes and adult disabled children can get benefits, and we're going to focus on that one tonight. Also, sometimes parents can get benefits if they're dependent on the person who's passed away. So for this benefit to kick in, the person who died has to have worked long enough to have credits to kick in this insurance, okay? So if you haven't worked very long and paid FICA taxes into the system, you may not have this kind of benefit available to your widow, or your minor children, et cetera. So how do you get those credits? How do you know you've got enough credits to get that insurance? Well, you have to earn money, pay FICA taxes, and this year in 2023, every time you earn $1,640, you get a credit. And you get a maximum of 4 credits every year. So to get survivor's benefits, it really depends on how many credits you need, depends on how old the person was when he or she died. So, if I die in my 50s, I got to have a lot more credits than if my son was killed at age 28. And so, we got to look at ages, but nobody ever needs more than 40 credits. So that's about 10 years worth of work. So as long as you've, paid into the system consistently, hopefully you'll have enough credits, and that will be insurance if something happens to you and you need your dependents to be paid. So when somebody dies, what happens is the death should be reported to the Social Security office, and any payments that have come in get returned to the Social Security office, and then there's a lump sum payment. The lump sum payment goes out to the spouse who's living in the household, or if there's no one living in the household, to a spouse living in a different household, and then children. So there's a priority list to get the big $255. Not that is going to cover a whole lot, but that's what we get. Okay. And then how much does the surviving spouse get, the widow? That depends how old the widow is, okay? If the widow is at their own full retirement age, then they can get 100% of the benefit of the person who died. So what that means is if my husband passes away and I'm over the age of 67, I can get his full retirement benefit myself, okay? Now that's my maximum, so if I was already getting my own benefit and his is higher, I'm not going to get both, but I can get his whole benefit. And that's really important to a lot of us in this room who may not be working as much. You know, I stayed home for 10 years, and there's lots of people who have kids with special needs that aren't out there working and building a huge Social Security retirement base. So this is valuable to know. If you're younger, you don't get as much. And if you're caring for a child who is under 16 or disabled, you can also get some benefits off of the parent who passed away. I'm going kind of quickly through this so we can get to the disability. Divorced spouses can also sometimes draw benefits if you were married at least 10 years or you have a child who has a serious disability. You can remarry after your spouse dies, and if you remarry after the age of 60, then you still keep the benefit. If you get remarried before age 60, you might lose that benefit. There are lots of exceptions to all these rules, and there's a lot of details. I gave you all several handouts, and there's a really long handout on Social Security. If you never read it, I won't be offended, but if you're interested in more details, it's in your folder, okay? This is the one we all want to really pay attention to. Okay. Unmarried minors and disabled children also get benefits, survivor benefits from the decedent. So someone who is under the age of 18 is going to get that benefit automatically, or up to age 19 if they're still in school. But look at this third bullet. You can get this benefit at any age if the person who has disabilities was disabled before the age of 22. Now, it's a little tricky because when I say disabled before the age of 22, I don't just mean diagnosed with some kind of disability, but disabled by Social Security standards. So we're going to talk about that. Like, what I think is as someone who's disabled may not be the same thing as what Social Security considers someone to be disabled, if that makes sense. Okay, how much do the kids get? 75% of the parent's work record. So let me explain that a little better. So if my husband again passes away, my daughter, who is an adult disabled child who has been disabled and receiving Social Security since before she was age 22, she can get 75% of her dad's Social Security benefit for the rest of her life if she doesn't get married and doesn't start having a full-time job, and if she's still considered disabled by their standards. So it's a really, really valuable benefit. I mentioned dependent parents can also get benefits. Yes? So, okay, I am not a tax specialist, so I'm going to try to refrain from tax advice. Okay, Dawn asked us, do someone receiving Social Security benefits need to file tax return? Do they pay income tax? It's going to depend how much the benefit is. If it's SSI, my understanding is you're not ever going to have to pay taxes because SSI is such a low amount. SSDI, there is a threshold where you would pay income taxes, I believe. Please confirm all that with your CPA. That's my understanding, though, okay? If you're in a situation where a child is getting benefits and a surviving spouse is getting benefits, you know, there's widow benefits, there is a family maximum. So if you have more than one disabled adult child, there is going to be a maximum that's paid out for the family. Okay, so that's kind of a quick overview of survivor benefits, and there's a lot we could say about retirement, but what we really want to focus on is the disability program. How do you get disability benefits? So when most of us talk about someone who's getting disability, we say, you know, or on disability benefits, what we're usually talking about is Social Security disability insurance. It's also called SSDI. You might hear it called DIB. You know, it's all the same thing, Social Security disability insurance. So how much does someone get if they're receiving SSDI? It varies. So there's going to be a monthly payment based on how much money's been paid into the Social Security system, okay? And then after a waiting period, you also can get Medicare benefits with SSDI. People are insured. When I'm paying into the system, I have this disability insurance in case I become disabled before my retirement age, but I also have other people insured under my work record. My spouse, an ex-spouse sometimes, minor children, and then again, disabled adult children. So as I pay my Social Security taxes, my insurance is covering not just me, but my daughter, who is a disabled adult child. How do you get that childhood disability benefits? That benefit program is available for someone who is over the age of 18 and not married, and their disability began before the age of 22 and has continued since that age. and now they have a parent who's died, retired, or become disabled. And we already touched on this a little bit before, but if you have a parent who's retired and a disabled adult child in the home, the disabled adult child will get 50% of the parent's benefit. So it doesn't lower the parent's benefit. You know, I get my full amount of retirement, but my daughter gets 50% of what I'm getting. And we already mentioned if I die, she gets 75%. So this is really important. So I want to make sure we're clear on this because this is a very important benefit to understand. So as I'm paying into the system, once I have enough credits, I have disability insurance not only for me if I become disabled and can't make it to my retirement age, but I also have insurance for my daughter who's disabled, okay? And if I need to draw on my disability insurance and start getting paid my retirement early, basically, then I'm going to get my full benefit, and it's going to kick in something for my daughter who can also get paid 50% of what I take home. Now, if I never use my disability benefit, if I make it all the way to my retirement age, then I'll start drawing my retirement, and that's when it'll kick in for her, and she will start getting 50% of what I draw. I hope that made sense. So ask me if that's still confusing, okay? So this childhood disability benefits is going to kick in when a parent retires, or if they draw disability through the Social Security system, or they die, okay? And it's 50% if it's a parent who retired or is drawing disability, 75% if the parent has died. Okay, I tried to explain that multiple ways. I think it was a little confusing, but all right. So how it's only available for someone who became disabled before the age of 22. And I will tell you, most people, parents like us, we think, oh, that's easy to prove. You know, my daughter was diagnosed, you know, when she was 15 with this, and when she was 8, you know, she was diagnosed with autism, you know, and we think it's very easy to prove. It's not so simple, okay? How do you prove disability? We're not talking about a diagnosis. We're talking about, does this person qualify as being disabled by Social Security standards? And that really is different. So the easiest way to prove that someone was disabled before 22 is to get them on benefits. You know, if you get your child receiving benefits before age 22, there's your proof that they were disabled before 22. Because Social Security admitted, you know, yes, they've determined that this person's disabled. So how do you get someone on disability benefits? To qualify for Social Security disability, you have to be medically determined to be disabled and technically eligible. So 2 parts to it. So the medical determination, it's going to depend if we're talking about a child or an adult. So if we're trying to see if a child is determined to be disabled, it's going to be similar to what you see in school, you know, with the special ed requirements. It's going to be someone who is medically determinable, has a medically determinable physical or mental impairment that results in marked and severe functional limitations, and it's an impairment that has lasted or is expected to last at least 1 year or result in death. Okay, how are you going to figure that out? This is going to be lots of school records, asking the teachers to fill out forms, having parents fill out forms. And what Social Security is going to look at is there a marked limitation in 2 of these areas on the screen, or a severe limitation in 1 of these areas? And so there's going to be lots of, you know, reports and school records to kind of see, does this person qualify as being medically disabled as a minor child? And so if your child receives special education, this is a little easier to qualify medically speaking, okay? Once someone is 18, by the way, that's my daughter, so isn't she cute? Once someone is age 18, it's a different determination. We're not looking at those school records. We are looking at, can this person engage in substantial gainful activity? So those are key words, substantial gainful activity. You'll hear it referred to as SGA. So, and if someone is not able to engage in substantial gainful activity because they have a medically determinable physical or mental impairment that's expected to result in death or last at least 12 months, that's when Social Security determines this person is a disabled adult, okay? So substantial, what do we mean by substantial? That means someone can work, but maybe, you know, I've got to think how I say this. I don't want anyone to leave here thinking my child can't work or they're not going to get on benefits. That's a terrible way to look at it. There's plenty of ways for our children who are going to go out and need these benefits to also have jobs, but maybe it's a part-time job. Maybe it's a lot of supports involved. That works great. But if someone can get out and work a substantial amount, 30, 40 hours a week, they may not be considered to be disabled. Okay, gainful, this is really the key word. How much money can they earn? All right? So in 2023, if someone is earning more than $1,470 in a month, they're not disabled. So it doesn't matter how long your list is of disabilities, how many doctors you see. If you are earning more than $1,470 in 2023, you're not disabled. And so that's important to understand. So as our children start working, typically we see for people who receive these kinds of benefits, they work part-time, but they don't earn that level of money. And again, I don't want to discourage anyone from encouraging their kids to work. In fact, we should all be trying to get our kids to work. And if your child is successful and can work a 40-hour job, you ought to celebrate, because that is a whole lot better than being on benefits. You know, that's cause for celebration. If you are blind, it's a higher amount, $2,460. Okay, so when someone applies for disability, we're talking about the medical determination. Remember, there's two parts. There's medical and technical, so we're still on medical determination. So what the Social Security office does is they look, and the very first thing they ask is this person who applied for disability working? If they are working, how much are they earning? And if they are earning over that SGA level, they're not disabled. You get a denial, it's done. We don't even go to the next step, okay? If someone is not earning that SGA level, then the next question that the Social Security office asks is the medical condition severe? Usually it's going to be severe. You know, if you're applying for benefits, it's usually something pretty severe. Number 3, does this condition meet or medically equal a listing? Now, what do we mean by a listing? This is also a good tip if you're going to be applying for Social Security. A medical listing, there is a handbook, or I guess you'd say a regulation with Social Security that we refer to as the Blue Book. The official name is Medical Listing Disability Evaluation under Social Security SSA Blue Book. Okay, so we call it the Blue Book. If you go to the Blue Book, there is a listing of impairments. There's one section for adults and one section for children. And so if you have a child with a disability, you can Google SSA Blue Book, and you can Google your child's specific disability and see exactly what the Social Security Administration is going to want to see to determine your child is being disabled. Or grandchild, sorry for everyone, I keep saying child. Okay, so I'll give you an example. Here, epilepsy. So my daughter has epilepsy, so I can say, all right, her name's Angela. Angela has epilepsy. Let's see what they want to see, what Social Security wants to see to determine if she's disabled. Because if I can show the things that qualify under the Blue Book, then she's going to qualify for disability right away. It's going to be much easier. So I look on here and I see all the the qualifications. Does she have seizures? And I'm not going to go through this, but I look through this. In my daughter's case, her seizures are under control. So when I look at this, I say, oh no, she's not going to qualify because her seizures are under control. So it is still a factor to tell Social Security about, but it's not going to be an automatic qualification for her because she doesn't match this description. Okay? So then I go to another one. My daughter also has an intellectual disability. They call it an intellectual disorder. So I look through this and I see, okay, is there something on here that would help her qualify quickly? In our case, yes, there is. I can look at her IQ scores, and I can show that she has an IQ score below 70, and I can see if I can turn in that testing showing an IQ below 70, and then I can show that she has limitations in these other areas, I know what they're looking for. They're looking to see, can she understand, remember, and apply information? How does she interact with others? How's her concentration? How does she manage herself? So when I'm filling out that application, I know these are the areas they're interested in learning about. So again, you have to be completely honest, of course, but if you know what they're looking for, you know how to answer the questions as far as, emphasizing certain struggles that someone has to qualify. Okay? Now, I'm not going to go through all of these, but you can look at all the different things. Here's ones for autism. You can say, okay, my child has autism. What is it, again, that they want to see to qualify as being disabled? What is Social Security looking for? Now, what if, and by the way, let me say this, autism is actually kind of tough because autism is such a spectrum, as we all know, that just saying this person has autism doesn't tell the Social Security Administration very much. You know, there's one person with autism who may have very, very severe disabilities, and another person who may be very high functioning could work a full-time job. So again, it's not the diagnosis, it is the specifics under the diagnosis, okay? There are compassionate allowances programs. There are some situations where someone can qualify immediately for disability. Some of us experienced that. If, you know, my daughter was born just a couple pounds. She was just a little 2-pound baby. You know, if you have a really low birth weight, they kick you on benefits real fast. And there are some other conditions where you get disability benefits very, very quickly. Okay, now, what if you look at that blue book and you say, oh no, you know, my child's not going to qualify for disability. You know, we don't fit all the criteria. It doesn't mean you're not going to be approved for disability. It just means it's not automatic. You're going to have to go to the next step, okay? You didn't, on question number 3, does the medical condition meet or medically equal a listing? If the answer is yes, you're approved. If the answer is no, we go to the next step, okay? The next step is, can this person applying for disability do work that they used to do? So if I become disabled, you know, they're going to look at me, what kind of jobs did Allison used to have? Could she go be an attorney? Well, what else has she done? Can she do something else? They're going to look at my past work. And if I can't do that, and for our children, a lot of times they're not going to have a lot of past work to look at. Number 5 is the real clincher, okay? Can this person do any other work? Okay, so if someone is 18 applying for disability benefits, this is going to be a really important question. Can this person do work? So if someone is coming right out of high school, they haven't tried to work, very likely the Social Security Administration might say no. You know, if we don't have really low IQs and clear eligibility under that question 3, the blue book, a lot of times people get denied here because they haven't tried. So I would encourage you, work with Texas Workforce Commission, try to get jobs, you know, try to build a work history. And, you know, if your children succeed and are able to work, you should celebrate and enjoy that. But if they're not, at least you're trying, you're showing, you have evidence to show the Social Security office that, you know, we attempted this job. Unfortunately, my son couldn't keep the job, you know, or my daughter had this job but needed all this support and then lost the job. You know, this kind of history helps with the benefits program. Now, again, if your child has really significant disabilities, you're not going to need to show a lot of work history. You're probably going to get approved on a previous evaluation step, if that makes sense. Okay, so what happens is a lot of people get denied because the evidence is not there that someone can't work. Don't give up at that point. A lot of cases get appealed and are won on appeal. So if you go through this process and your child is denied for disability, you can appeal it. And when you appeal it, you go through several steps, but eventually you end up having a hearing in front of an administrative law judge, and that's where you get to tell your story. You know, that's where, you know, we're not just looking at paper. You can tell the judge, look, here's what happened. You know, we tried this. It didn't work. We tried this. You know, here's why my child really should be considered disabled. And so a lot of cases are won on appeal. You can apply for benefits without an attorney. My recommendation, I am an attorney, but I mean, I'm telling you this as a parent. My recommendation is don't do an appeal by yourself. If you need to appeal, you'll want a lawyer to help you. And all lawyers get paid the same. Social Security Administration pays a representative 25% of the back pay. And then nothing beyond, you know, once the case is approved, no more payment. So what that means is if you need a lawyer to help you, you don't have to pay the lawyer up front. They go and work your case. And if your case gets approved in 3 months, then there's back pay for 3 months. The back pay starts when you make your application, okay? And that's general. There's a few exceptions to that. But so the lawyer would just get maybe that 3 months worth of back pay, 25% of the benefit for 3 months. If you end up in an appeal that takes a year or 2 years, obviously the attorney gets more. There is a cap for attorneys of, I think it's $7,200. I don't actually do medical appeals. I do a different kind. But all right, does that make sense? So don't give up if you don't get approved. You know, talk to someone and maybe it's worth appealing. Any questions on the medical determination before we move on to the technical eligibility? Okay, yeah, great question. Don asks, when is it that you should start applying? We're gonna get into that a little bit more, but if you have a child who's under the age of 18, you as a parent have a legal duty to support that child. So depending what program you're trying to get into, maybe I should answer this a little later. If you don't have a parent who is retired or drawing disability or deceased, you're probably looking at the SSI program, and you have to be really poor to qualify. And so parents' income count for the children. So if you have limited income and assets, your child may qualify. But most of the time, if you're working, if you've got parents working, you might have to wait till after the child is 18. We'll explain that a little bit more. We'll get into that. Good question. Okay, so that was medical determination. So not just, we need to look at not only medical eligibility, but technical eligibility. So someone could have extremely severe disabilities, but not qualify technically, okay? How do you know if you qualify technically? This is where the Social Security office looks at your credits. So you can go to that SSA.gov, when you create your own account, and see how many credits do I have? How many credits, does my child have any credits? So if someone becomes disabled when they're 22, I say become, when they qualified age 22, they only need 6 credits. That's a year and a half worth of work. So a lot of our kids who go out and get some, part-time jobs and work a little bit, they might have their own work record where they can get disability benefits off of their own work record. I'm a lot older. I need more like 8.5 years. So depending on your age, that's how many credits you need. And it also needs to be recent work. So if you haven't been paying into the Social Security system or haven't paid in enough, long enough, or most recently, recently enough, then you're not going to qualify technically, okay? And I'll explain that in more detail in just a minute. So for people who don't have their credits, they are considered uninsured. So that is somebody like my daughter who's never been able to hold down a good job and build her own credits. It also was me for many years because I stayed home with her. A lot of us are not working because we're caring for our kids. Sometimes teachers, in this area, a lot of times don't pay into the Social Security system. So, if you're under a system where you're not paying Social Security taxes, you may be uninsured, okay? If you are uninsured, what's going to happen is there's going to be a letter that comes in response to your application that says you are denied, and it is a technical denial. It doesn't mean that your child's not medically disabled. It means they don't have the credits. They don't have a parent who's disabled or retired or deceased, and they don't have their own credits, so they're technically denied. It'll be a letter that says something like, you do not qualify for disability benefits because you haven't worked long enough, okay? And I get so many phone calls from parents who say, my child has all these severe disabilities and they're denied. And I say, look at the corner. It's the first step. This is just a denial for the insurance program. Okay, there's going to be another opportunity to qualify for disability benefits, but this is the SSDI. This is the disability insurance program. Okay, if you don't have those benefits under Title II, you're denied. So if you get denied because you don't qualify technically, you get moved over and evaluated under Title 16, which is SSI, Supplemental Security Income, okay? So for a lot of us who are working when our kids hit the age of 18, our kids aren't going to have the work credits a lot of times, so they end up going on to the SSI program first, and eventually they'll move over to the SSDI program. So what is SSI, Supplemental Security Income? This is a program for individuals who are disabled that provides a certain level of support. The government determines the level of support. Now, remember I said for SSDI, the insurance benefit, the dollar amount that someone gets every month is going to vary. If my daughter's getting benefits because of my work record, it's going to be lower than if she's getting it off of my husband's records because he worked a lot longer. In other words, I said I took off 10 years. So if I retire first, the 50% she gets from my benefit is going to be lower than when her dad retires, she'll switch to his work record. Okay. And all of us are going to get different amounts based on what we've paid into the system. SSI is different. Here, the government says, this is how much everybody gets. And this is across the country although there are some states that give a supplement, like California and Massachusetts. They give a little extra. But otherwise, there is a standard amount. In 2023, the government has determined that someone who is disabled is entitled to $914 a month to provide for their basic food and shelter. Now, I don't know about you, $914 is not going to provide for a whole lot of food and shelter, but that's the maximum benefit in 2023, okay? If there's both people are eligible, husband and wife are eligible, it goes up to $1,371. No, you can still get food stamps and get SSI. Yes, this is how much you would get for the SSI program, but it doesn't mean you're not eligible for these other programs, okay? I see what you're saying, because I'm saying it's for food and shelter, but yeah, you're right. That was a confusing way for me to say it, but basically, SSI is supposed to cover your basic needs, but you can also get food stamps. Okay, so again, supplemental security income, we're gonna have to qualify medically and technically. So the medical determination is exactly like what I already explained for SSDI. So you're going to go through those 5 questions, see if someone qualifies under the Blue Book evaluation, and that would determine whether or not they're medically eligible. But now the technical eligibility, instead of looking at credits, we're looking at money. How much does this person have in income and assets? All right, so this is a needs-based program to provide basic food and shelter benefits, so you have to have very limited income and assets to qualify. We call it a means-tested program, okay? Limited assets, Social Security calls assets resources, so same thing. Limited resources. A resource is anything that you can convert to cash, and someone is considered to have limited resources if they have less than $2,000, $3,000 if you're a couple. And look at this. We're going to look at it. We're going to measure it on the first day of every month. But notice the second and third bullets. If you are married, your spouse's resources count for you. And if you are under the age of 18, your parents' resources count for you. So we can see here that a lot of people who apply for SSI and they're either married or they're minors, they're not going to qualify because they've got parents who might have 2 cars, who might have, more than $2,000. There are some exceptions we'll get to. In fact, let me cover these first. Okay, so I said you can have up to $2,000. You can have a house, but you can't have a second house. So you could have a house and be on SSI. They won't count your first house, but you can't have rental property or something. You can have 1 car, but not 2 cars. So if someone is getting SSI and a second car is purchased, they're no longer eligible. We don't count your household goods, so your washer, your dryer, computer, your furniture. You can also have a prepaid funeral. You can have, these different things. And then the biggies are you can have a special needs trust with any amount of money in there. And you can have an ABLE account. Okay, so we're going to touch on those tonight. So this is really critical to understand. For those of us who are worried about leaving our kids without, we want our kids to have resources so they're not having to live on $914 a month, we can leave money to a special needs trust, and whatever we leave to that trust will not count as their assets. Does that make sense? It's got to be a special needs trust. But I want to emphasize a couple other things first. And resources, anything that can be converted to cash. So you need to think about, have you purchased some kind of whole life insurance policy for your child? Could your child, when they hit age 18, would they have the ability to cash that out? Is there something out there that they could convert to cash? Because if there is, that is a resource for them. And unfortunately, what we see a lot of times is someone has some kind of benefit out there that could have been converted to cash. Nobody knew about it until maybe 5 or 6 years after they're receiving benefits. Social Security Administration finds out about that, and then we have to pay back all the money for the last 5 or 6 years. So you got to think carefully, what does my child have? So if you are saving for your child's college, you would want to save for it in a special needs trust or an ABLE account, because the money in there doesn't count. You can't be opening up a bank account in your child's name and have it not count as an asset for them when you go to apply for these programs. Okay? So the 2 biggies, again, that we're going to touch on are the special needs trust and the ABLE accounts. Special needs trust is a specific kind of trust. only for someone who is disabled. And an ABLE account is a tax advantage savings account that you manage online, and it is for people who were disabled before the age of 26. And just a couple of weeks ago, we had a new law passed beginning in January 1st, 2026. It's going to be for people who were disabled before the age of 46. Okay, so now we're at 26, it's going up to 46. All right, so those are assets. I talked about resources. The other thing that the Social Security Administration is going to look at is income. How much income does this person have? And this is where it gets really confusing, because they have all kinds of categories of income. Earned income, which is what most of us think of, working a job. Unearned income, in-kind support and maintenance, and deemed income. So deemed income is what we've already said. A spouse's income counts for the other spouse. It's deemed to the other spouse. Parents' income counts for minor children, if the parent's living in the home. That's deemed income. Earned income is what you think of, someone's working a job. And if someone is working a job, then we want to see how much are they earning. And remember, if they're earning over the SGA amount, they're not disabled. Okay? But the Social Security Administration wants to encourage us to get out and work if we're on disability, so they make it financially worth it for us to go work a little bit. And so what they say is, if you are working, we're still going to give you SSI unless you're over the SGA amount, but if you're earning less than that SGA amount, we'll let you keep the first $85 that you earn. Basically, they let you keep the first $20 no matter where it comes from. And if you're earning your money, they let you keep the next $65 and they don't lower the benefit. After that first $85, you have to figure out what the balance is that you earn that month, cut it in half, and they'll reduce your benefits by that amount. So let me give you an example, because that doesn't make a lot of sense. Okay, so if my daughter goes out and she makes $685 in the month, they're going to say, okay, we'll let you keep the $85. We won't lower your benefit. But then you got $600 left that you earned, so we're going to cut that in half. That's $300. So we're going to reduce your benefit by $300. That was coincidentally the perfect easy math for me to do. So instead of getting $914 now, she's going to get $614. So they are encouraging her to work, because if you add her $614 plus the $685 she earned, she has a lot more money. You see what I mean? So we're going to see that's different for unearned income, where they're just going to take it dollar for dollar. But if it's earned income, they're going to try to make it be a good deal to get out and work and earn some money. Any questions on that? Okay. By the way, if you are on SSI and you're working, you've got to report the wages. That's really important. I don't think anyone here in this room is on SSI yet, but be aware that once your child is on that benefit and they start earning money, have any changes, you always report everything to Social Security. Okay? And by the way, there are a lot of programs that will help our kids get out and work and still qualify for these benefits. There's something called a Red Book that has all kinds of programs out there. One program that would be real applicable for most people in this room is the Student Earned Income Exclusion. For someone who's under the age of 22 and regularly attending school, they can earn up to $2,220 a month and not have their benefits reduced. Now, that's a little misleading, because if you earn over the SGA, so maybe that's confusing. But basically, you can earn money and not have it count against you. Let me word this a little differently. If your student is out there with a job, they're not going to have their SSI reduced when they're under age 22. Okay. Now, if they're earning a whole bunch of money, then it's a different story. Okay. Let me just keep going. So there's a lot of programs. If you need certain costs to help you be able to work, maybe you need assistive technology or transportation costs, that can also be factored into, payment, not lowering your benefit. All right, let me keep going. All right, the other kind of income, another kind is the unearned income. Unearned income is going to reduce a benefit dollar for dollar, other than the first $20. So this is a situation where someone gets a gift, or maybe they have child support for an adult disabled child, or they got some kind of pension. That kind of benefit coming in is going to lower SSI dollar for dollar. In some cases, it's going to make SSI impossible. It's going to make the person ineligible. So let me show you a little bit more of that. So if grandma gives my daughter $520, Social Security is not going to count the first $20, but they are going to count the next $500. So instead of getting $914, she has to report, hey, I got $520 from grandma. So you have to report that. And then next month, she only gets $414. So you report these gifts. Okay, now if it's something that is coming in on a regular basis, like military survivor benefits, this can be a problem, okay? Military survivor benefits, if someone's getting, I'm not in the military, but say my daughter was getting $3,000 a month in military survivor benefits and she was on SSI, we would take her starting point of SSI $914, reduce it dollar for dollar by the amount of military survivor benefit payment she's getting, and now she's ineligible for SSI because there's too much income coming in. Now there's a way around that, and guess what it is? Special needs trust. What you do is you get the military survivor benefits assigned to the special needs trust, and then you can keep your eligibility. Child support, another thing, you can get child support assigned to a special needs trust. So in Texas, we have lifetime child support allowed for people who have very serious disabilities, and child support is not going to end at age 18. So if someone is over the age of 18 and there's child support being paid, it is going to count, in Social Security's mind, it's going to count as income for that disabled person, all right? Even though the check is going to mama or daddy, it is, Social Security says, it is income for the person with disabilities. And it's going to reduce the benefit dollar for dollar. But again, what we can do is go to court, get the child support assigned to a special needs trust, and all of a sudden the money doesn't count. Now that one is going to take a court order. It's more complicated, but there are ways to still get child support and still be eligible for these benefits, okay? The last type of income I want to touch on is in-kind support and maintenance. We call that ISM. This is hard to understand this as income, but what this is basically is if someone is living in your house for free, the Social Security office says, well, that is a type of income. We call it ISM, and we're going to reduce the benefit by 1/3, okay? So, and the reason they do that is they say, okay, SSI is a needs-based program. It is for people who are poor. So if someone is living for free, they don't need as much. They're getting free food, free shelter. They don't need the whole amount, and so they reduce it by 1/3. Now, it gets a little complicated. If a trust is paying for the food and shelter, there's a $20 difference, and there's a few little, differences, but that's the general rule. There are ways around that. You can say, okay, yeah, my child is living in my house for free, but guess what? She is paying her fair share of our expenses. So yeah, Angela lives with mom and dad, but she pays every month. She pays us to live here. She pays her portion of the mortgage and the utilities. And there are certain things that Social Security office wants to see. And this is in a handout that I left for you. They want to see, what is the food bill? What's the mortgage? What's the electricity, the water? You total up all the bills for your household. You figure out how many people are in the house, and that's the fair share amount. And again, I give you a handout on this. So when you get on SSI, if your child has a reduction because of ISM, in-kind support and maintenance, there may be a way around it by just having your child pay their fair share of expenses, okay? And don't want to get in, I know there's just a lot of stuff, but let me just touch on a couple things so it'll spark your memories if it comes up for you. So, well, let me use this example. So if someone is living at home, we've got here, Maria lives at home with her parents, and they are renting a place for $850, and here's all their bills that total, coincidentally, a nice round number of $1,500, and there are 3 of them in the house. So you take $1,500, divide it by 3, and Maria's fair share is $500. So what Maria does with her parents' help is goes and reports all this to Social Security and says, here's our bills, here's her fair share, and Maria's going to pay us $500 every month, and they'll say, oh, you're paying your fair share? We'll give you the full amount of SSI. We're not going to penalize you and give you that 1/3 reduction, okay? But what if Maria or my daughter Angela doesn't have enough money to pay her fair share? A lot of times there's a mortgage and the cost, it's just too expensive. The person doesn't get enough money to pay their 1/3 share. That's where we have some other tools that we can use, and one of those is an ABLE account. You can also sign a lease agreement. So, I could sign an agreement with my daughter that says, here's your room and board payment, you pay me every month, and there are ways to get that approved. That is not my favorite way to do it because I think there may be tax consequences, even though I said I'm not going to talk about taxes. But if I treat my daughter as a tenant, I think that's income for me. Plus, I might want to claim her as a dependent on my taxes, and I don't necessarily want her being a tenant. I want her to be my dependent. So another option is an ABLE account. Again, and I left you a lot of information on ABLE accounts in your folders, but ABLE accounts are accounts for people who are disabled before the age of 26. Later on, it's going to be 46. And basically, anyone can donate to an ABLE account. You open up an account online, and I can put money in that ABLE account. My daughter can put her own money. Grandma can donate money. Whenever anybody puts money in the ABLE account, it is considered to be the beneficiary's money. So if I say, I'm going to move $500 to my daughter's ABLE account, as soon as I put it in there, they say, Social Security says, oh, that's Angela's money. Doesn't matter that I put it there. It's now her money. So what a lot of people do is they use an ABLE account to help pay the fair share amount. Okay, so if Angela's 1/3 share is too high, she doesn't have enough money, what I can do is actually just donate money to an ABLE account, and now she uses her ABLE account to help pay. It's all above board. You have to report it all to Social Security. Lots of people do that. You don't need to understand all this. There's some handouts on this, but just know if your child gets on SSI and has an ISM penalty, there are ways around that. Okay. I need to stop. I need to wrap up because there's a lot of information. I just want to comment on a couple other things, and then I'll stop talking. Okay. Again, I mentioned that a lot of people who apply for these disability benefits don't get approved. Don't give up if you don't get approved. Talk to someone and see if it's worth appealing. A lot of people appeal, and they get approved on appeal. The first step is something called a request for reconsideration. I'm not going to go into these details. But you can have, anyway, there's different ways to do that appeal. If you can appeal anything, by the way. So we were talking about ISM. If I told Social Security, hey, my daughter's paying her fair share, and they said, nope, we don't believe it, we're still going to give her the penalty for ISM, I can appeal that. I can say, oh, no, I want to talk to someone because this is not right. So I can appeal a medical denial. I can appeal a technical denial. I can appeal an ISM problem. If you appeal it, you can have what's called an informal conference if it's not a medical appeal. If it's a medical appeal, you don't get to do this. But if it's something where you just need to go talk to someone and show them your bills, you can actually just ask for an informal conference, go and meet with someone. And I've helped people do this, and they almost always get it worked out quickly, okay? Medical, if it's a medical denial, that's not an option. And you end up with basically, it's a reconsideration where they call it a case review, and the Social Security office looks at this, and about 90% of the time they say, yeah, we looked at it again, and we still think we're right. So 90% of the time you don't win on that step. But then the next step is when you go to a judge, okay? This, again, is where I would use a lawyer. Now, I will warn you, if you go through this appeals process, it is slow. Here's the most recent numbers. In San Antonio, if you want to ask for an appeal in front of a judge, you're looking at about 426 days before you get to that judge. That's terrible. Now, there's word on the street that it's going to get faster, but I mean, this is not quick. So if your child is denied for SSI, you should just know this might take a while to get it resolved, okay? If you get all the way to that appeal and you win, then you're going to get back pay for all those months you waited. So you can always just say, I give up, and then file another application, start over. But if you hold on and you fight through the appeal, they'll give you the back pay from when you initially applied. Okay? I'm not going to get into this. These are all just tips on the appeal. If you're in an appeal situation, my biggest piece of advice for you is I would get a law firm or someone who does this to help you, because there are ways to win the appeal with a little bit of understanding of how the system works and the evidence that you need to provide. So I wouldn't try to do an appeal by myself. But you could file the initial application by yourself, especially if you look at the Blue Book and you see, oh, yeah, my child is going to qualify, should qualify very easily. You know, Down syndrome is a perfect example. You know, Down syndrome, it's easy to have the medical evidence that will qualify somebody. You know, very low IQ scores. You know, so a lot of people can do it on their own, but if you need a lawyer, just get a lawyer. Another thing, if you end up not reporting benefits, or you don't report your work hours correctly, or you did something incorrectly, Social Security can come back and say, hey, you were overpaid. You owe us all the money back. And it happens all the time. So when you do that application, be completely honest. I cannot tell you how many people tell me, well, I don't think they would ever know. I'm like, No, 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 no. You don't go down that road. First of all, there is something real serious about Medicaid fraud. I represent a lot of people in guardianship court, and this has come up multiple times where I try to get a parent appointed as a guardian, and they had some problem with Medicaid benefits years ago, and it is a problem. You know, I'm not saying we can't get them appointed, but that will follow you. So do not mess with this. Be real honest and open about the assets that you have, that your child has. Be upfront about that, okay? And report. Like, for example, if you have a car accident and your child gets a settlement, you report it to Social Security. Tell them, hey, my child just got $20,000 because our family was in a car accident. So always report. You know, it's just not worth hiding anything at all, okay? And overpayments happen usually because people don't report. You know, there's something that they got and they just didn't explain what they had. If you do have an overpayment, there's lots of ways we can fight it. We can appeal it. We can ask for a waiver. We can ask for a payment plan. I'm not going to get into a lot of details here. If you have an overpayment and you need some advice, feel free to call me and I'll walk you through it and tell you what your options are. And there's more explanation in the paper. Okay, I'm going to just skip to representative payee. When someone receives SSI benefits, if they are unable to manage their benefits, SSI or SSDI, if they don't have the capacity to manage their benefits, the Social Security office will appoint a representative payee. That's kind of like a guardian or a power of attorney for Social Security money. Okay, so, and by the way, Social Security doesn't care about your powers of attorney. You know, they'll take your guardianship letters, but they like their system, and their system is called representative payee. So my daughter receives SSI, and on our bank accounts it says Allison Packard for Angela Packard. You know, it's not a joint account, it's a representative payee account. So it's really easy to just show Social Security that this person needs help, and that a lot of times avoids a guardianship of the estate. We're not getting into that, but guardianships of the estate in Texas can be real expensive, and that's where you have to have a lawyer every year doing accounting on the money. And so the representative payee option, if your child's only getting SSI or SSDI, then we can avoid guardianship of the estate if that's the only income, typically. Anyway, and a special needs trust. All right, I'm rambling a little bit. Always watch for letters from the Social Security Administration. If you get a letter and you don't understand it, let someone help you figure it out, okay? And if you would need my help, feel free to write down my contact information, or it's on the last page of that PowerPoint presentation, and feel free to call me and I'm happy to talk to you about that. Okay, it's almost impressive. All right, questions. We have just a few minutes, and I'll stay after if anyone has specific questions. Do you all feel overwhelmed? Do you feel okay? What do you? Okay.
Talking to this that way,
Okay.
anyone watching on the live stream can hear your question.
When you're talking about medical proof, where do we know like where to go? Like obviously would go to a doctor to get that, but is there forms to where we know more in depth what specifically we need?
Okay, that's a great question. I should have elaborated on that. So the medical evidence, what's going to happen when you apply? You're going to list all of the doctors. And I'm talking as if we're all applying for helping our kids apply, so I'll just use that. So I'm going to write down all my daughter's doctors, and then the Social Security Administration is going to order all those records. And so if you think those records are going to be ordered, you need to, when you go to the doctor, be real honest with your doctor, but be open about the struggles. I will tell you, when I used to take my daughter to the doctor, I was so tired by the time we got there. She didn't want to be there. I was exhausted. I'd be like, yes, she's doing great. You know, can I just, you know, can we go? You've got to be honest, say, look, these are the struggles we're having, because if that gets in the medical records, that will be how your case is proven. Social Security Administration likes medical records. They're going to want school records also, but they really like medical records. So again, if you have a child with autism, for example, and you never go to the doctor, that's not going to help your case, because you're not going to have medical evidence of the disability. So that, you know, when they gather all your records, they're going to say, well, I can't see medical evidence that this person is disabled. We're just going to deny it. When they're not sure, they're going to deny it. And then you're stuck in the appeal, and it takes a long time to get it approved. So go to the doctors, explain the situation, but you don't have to provide the evidence. The Social Security office will gather it for you. What you need are all your providers, you know, all the information. Okay? Good question. Other questions? Yes.
My son is 17, so at what age would I start applying for the benefits for him to get the SSID?
Okay, great question. So if it is the Social Security Disability Insurance, then you want to look at, does this person have a parent who is disabled or retired or deceased? And when I say retired, I don't mean military retirement. I mean drawing Social Security retirement, okay? If they do, you can apply anytime because they're going to get benefits under their parents' work record. But if that's not the case, if we're looking at SSI, remember that your income and assets will count for your child. So if you're working, if there's a lot of income coming into the home, you probably just wait till the child's 18. You can start it a little early. I've heard people say you can turn in the paper application 6 months before. I usually tell people just do it after you're 18 so there's no confusion. But I think it is possible to turn in a paper application. You could set your appointment with Social Security ahead of time for after the child's 18th birthday. So again, if it's SSI and then wait till 18 if there are parents that are working. I say working, you've got to look at the it's a really complicated financial evaluation for minor kids. It depends on if the income in the home is earned income, unearned income, one parent, two parents, how many other kids are in the house. So if you think, we have very limited income and assets, talk to me and I'll pull up the chart and help you try to figure out, are you likely to qualify for a minor child? But once your child's 18, mom and dad's income and assets are irrelevant. We don't count it. Yeah, it doesn't count after age 18.
Application before he turned 18.
So I would wait until age 18. Again, I've been told that you can do an SSI paper application ahead of time, but I would just apply online after age 18.
Oh, okay.
Okay? Yeah. That is different, by the way, from a guardianship. If you think you're going to need a guardianship to make decisions for your children, that you can start about 6 months ahead of time and get that going in the court system. But SSI, you got to wait.
Summer. So I'm trying to get prepared for that. So I already made the support making decision letter. I think is that the name? The support making decision. Because my son has autism. He's verbal, but he has some behavior issues, and so that's gonna help me to start the application before he turned 18 or no?
No, okay, so the supported decision-making agreements, he needs to be 18 before he can sign that, and that's not going to help. What a supported decision-making agreement is some paperwork that says, I'm going to make all my own decisions, but I need help communicating, explaining, understanding, so I'm going to appoint a supporter to help me, my mom. But it doesn't mean you can sign anything for him. He still signs everything, and that's not going to really help or hurt. It's not going to make a difference on the application. By the way, that's a whole nother hour and a half on support decision-making agreements, powers of attorney versus guardianship. So convince Teresa to have me back and we can go down that road another time.
Oh, absolutely. I do have a question from the live stream. Okay. Where can you set up an ABLE account?
Another great question.
This is a parent of an individual, of a child who's 9. And she said it was great information, and lots of people are giving great feedback on the information, but she's asking where you can set up an ABLE account.
Okay. ABLE account is completely online. You can't go into a bank and say, I want an ABLE account. So I have a handout that I left here, and Teresa has it. You could take down my email address, email me, and I'll shoot it to anyone who's not here tonight. But basically, an ABLE account, you go online. If you're getting a Texas ABLE account, most states, all but 4, have their own ABLE accounts. You can just Google Texas ABLE. If the person who's getting an ABLE account is already receiving SSI or SSDI, it is super easy, super fast. 10 minutes later, you got your ABLE account. Really easy to set it up online. But again, it's managed 100% online. If someone is not already receiving these government benefits, you may need some medical documentation of the disability, because the ABLE account is only for people who are disabled. And the ABLE accounts, the money in there grows tax-free. And that's great. They're like 529 college plans, but they're for people with disabilities. The only thing, I know we're not talking about ABLE accounts, but I do want to emphasize, you should know ABLE accounts do have a Medicaid payback on them. There is a lot of people out there that say, oh, get an ABLE account, not a special needs trust. We don't have time to get into all that tonight. That's another hour we could talk about trusts and ABLE accounts. But you should just know an ABLE account is a great option, but it shouldn't replace a special needs trust. It's usually used with a special needs trust, because if you have an ABLE account and then your child dies, there's a Medicaid payback on it, meaning Medicaid gets paid back what's left in there. Okay, maybe I shouldn't have touched on that. Anyway, there's lots of information in the paperwork I gave you.
So if we'll wrap up the live feed at this time, I do want to thank Ms. Packard for coming out tonight. We'll be able to stay around for a few more minutes to answer a few more questions. I would also like to make sure that you are aware that on April 22nd, we will have our Judson ISD Transition Fair. Ms. Packard will be back with a breakout session to discuss SSI again. If you're like me, you have to hear it more than once, and I've heard her on multiple occasions and still learn something new every time. So you can certainly come back and attend the breakout session there. We will also have information at the Transition Fair on guardianship and alternatives, in addition to ACOG and the IDD services and how to begin that process, along with a bunch of other vendors that will be there to provide information about community resources. So definitely, it'll be at Wagner High School from 9 to 12 on April 22nd. Look for a flyer to come home, and all of those other means that I sent it out this time. And we definitely thank you for coming, and we got some really good feedback on the live stream, so that worked, and that's awesome to hear. And we also have our Judson ISD CPAC, which is our Special Education Parent Advisory Council, that we are just embarking on. This is our first year to try this out, and so we're in our growing stages. We're just trying to get interested people. So look for some more information. There will be another information session meeting that we'll have, and we'll attempt a hybrid version as well to try to see if we can accommodate people in a variety of ways. So look for more information. We would love for you to be a part of that, just to help us as a special education department partner with you to resolve any concerns that you may have in our district, and to also attempt to figure out what types of information you need. Obviously, this is something that was needed. Guardianship alternatives, that information is needed. You can access our playlist on the YouTube. Judson ISD TV has a YouTube, we have a YouTube playlist that there is a guardianship PowerPoint and presentation from the Texas Rio Grande Legal Aid. Actually, that one's alternatives to guardianship. So my presenter was ill so I had to cancel the one on guardianship, but maybe I'll see what Ms. Packard has on her calendar, and we'll try to get another guardianship presentation going. So thank you for your time. Have a wonderful evening, and we will see you next time.
Thank you. And I'll stay after if someone has specific questions that you just didn't want to share with the group, if that's okay.
That is absolutely fine.